Building a fan-centric organization. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Kitty Boo in Shanghai. Today we're bringing you the 5th episode of Thoughtful, sponsored by Weibo, China's leading microblogging platform, to help marketers understand this market's social media environment and use it more effectively to build online relationships with local consumers. If you'd like to hear more from the speakers in this sponsored series, Weibo is hosting a discussion site where viewers can interact with our guests and other industry members. You can access this site through the QR code on the screen or through Thoughtful's Weibo account at the link below. In this episode, we'll explore how brands have or should transform their marketing, sales, product, and other departments to become more fan-centric organization and develop a partner ecosystem. Our panelists Steven Drummond, Sam Fleming, and Ken Hong will tell you what kinds of agencies and platform partnerships can help companies improve their relationship with online fans. We'll also find out what it costs to work with key opinion leaders in China and share examples of brands working well with KOLs. And Ben Wilson will share a thought or two about how Reckitt Benckiser has built a fan-centric organization for brands like Durex. But first, with us in the studio today is Jessica Lee, Chief Communications and Corporate Affairs Officer at McDonald's China. Jessica, welcome to the studio today.
Thank you.
First of all, why don't you start by telling us how McDonald's view the value of online fans in China and some of the campaigns you've done to engage them?
So first of all, I think fans are really important to us because we have structured our communications and marketing team so that it really separates the communications team and reports directly into the CEO so that we can really focus on being fan-centric rather than being marketing-centric. So being fan-centric tells you, the value of the online fans is just critical to how we interact with them, how we build their loyalty. So we have about almost 5 million fans combined from a Weibo and WeChat together. So combined 5 million fans, these fans have very high engagement rates. They engage with us an average of 4.5, which is like 4 times more than our competitor. So I think that's very key. To be able to engage with them, it really helps us to understand their behaviors, really learn a lot from what they do, and helps us to build our ongoing communications campaign when it comes to interacting with our customers.
So has McDonald's taken any specific measures to transform your marketing and sales team and even your products to make them more sensitive to the online fans in China?
Yeah, you do, because once you actually, in the past, we never, just as much as like 3 years ago, we wouldn't have this base of 5 million fans, not just customers, they're fans. So you learn a lot from them. You actually know what they like and what they don't like, and they are your first baseline, I would say, when it comes to any campaign. You test a little bit with them and you see suddenly they are engaging with you, they like it, and so you can tailor certain things actually based on that, because that sort of represents the wider customer base and what they want. I give you an example. A good example would be what kind of McDonald's toys they like. Sometimes we just go out and we just ask them, hey, who do you want to come back? And they will vote and they'll tell you who they want to come back. And based on that, you can actually really tailor certain programs around what our customer base wants. So I think that's a very critical point. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your partner ecosystem in China. Which platforms do you turn to help you understand the fans in China and to engage them?
Well, we have 3 agencies. One is, we have a specific agency for Weibo, we have a specific agency for WeChat, and we have a specific agency for social listening. So the social listening piece is very important. You look at trends, because the minute you spot a trend, you hook on it, and you start to create a tweet about the trend that links back to your brand values. So, or you using the social listening to understand issues. For example, some issue is happening in Fuzhou. You look at it and you know that that's potentially going to viral, and you quickly build a communication platform around that just to make sure you can arrest the issue. Then you have Weibo. Weibo is very critical for us because it's an open platform that allows us to position ourselves in a corporate way. Very important for issues management, very important for the big campaigns. Then you have WeChat, which is more, interacting them on promotion basis. So these are very different, and we have 3 different agencies for different. And then at the same time, we have smaller agencies at the bottom feeding up to these agencies, because we believe that we need to use I would say a series of agencies to get the best creatives out of them. Because just to depend on 3 alone, I think you will not get the best creative in terms of social media ideas and campaigns.
Let's talk about mistakes. Have you seen any other companies making mistakes in China, trying to engage online fans? We don't need the specific names, but we just wanted to get a sense of what are the common mistakes that marketers have made adapting to the market here.
I wouldn't say mistakes, but I would say missed opportunities. And there are 3 things I see. One is strategic intent. I see a lot of companies post things, but I'm not sure what their strategy is, so it's not consistent. And the second would be budget. I hear companies going on social media strategy and thinking that it's actually cheaper. It is not cheap. I mean, at least 50% of our budget on a comms budget goes into social media. So social media done well is not an inexpensive thing, because you have to create content. The third is speed. Speed, because there are some multinationals that I understand actually have to run their tweets through their corporate HQ. That's too late. Social is social. It's a conversation. You don't wait for someone to approve your conversation. You have to do it there and then. I think if you wait 12 hours or even 5 hours to retweet something, you have missed the moment because you're not hooking on to the trend.
To sum up, so you need a good strategy, a good budget, and also the speed, and then good contents. Jessica, thanks for being with us today. Let's take a quick break. Then we'll hear from Ben Wilson, Bracket Benckiser's marketing director in China.
So what's Durex's take on building a fan-centric brand? Well, I think firstly, we don't think about fans, we think about friends. And I think when we think about social, when we think about digital engagement, for us it's about friends and friendship. I think if you then think about yourself, how you build friends, how you have friendships and social, I think that really helps you understand how a brand should approach it. So your friends, it's about having relevant content, things to talk about with your friends. What's relevant to them? What do you want to talk about with them? What's relevant today? What's relevant tomorrow? What can we plan in terms of relevance? Something we want to do together at the weekend. Being spontaneously relevant. The classic, it's raining outside, put a Durex on your shoes. So how are you relevant? What's the content that you have to share with your friends to have that conversation? I think that's the most important first thing. Secondly, I think it's about really building a trusting relationship. You need to be open with people. You need to build their trust. As a brand, you can't push branded content. People don't like it when a salesman comes to the party. They don't talk to the salesman, they talk to their friends. So it's how do you build that trust? How do you build that long-term relationship with people? Part of that's about openness. It's about transparency with people. You've got to stay true to who you are. And I think the third thing is about, your attitude and your personality. Do people like your attitude? Do they like your personality? Do they like what you value? You value what your friends typically value. You might not agree on everything, but in the whole, do you agree? Do you have the same sort of values? Do you have the same sort of personality? So when I think, about Durex, we've had some great content that's been very relevant to people. We have an attitude. People resonate with the attitude. And we've built relationships over the long term, relationships built on an open and trust basis. And I think really that's the magic, and that's really where social has come to life for Durex as a brand.
Thanks, Ben. We're back in our studio today with Steven Drummond,
Chairman and Chief Strategy Officer at Y&R China.
Sam Fleming, President of CIC, and Ken Hong, General Manager of Marketing Strategy at Weibo. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Strong brands have long learned the importance of building a consumer-centric culture, but today we're looking into building a fan-centric culture, which is a little bit different from that. It involves much more than just building up the brand's loyalty and also encouraging your consumers to even help you promote the brand. We've already heard from Jessica Lee about how McDonald's has revised its corporate structure as well as its marketing and even product line to build up a fan base. So Steven, today let's start with you. What's Coca-Cola's view about the value of online fans, and what are some of the successful campaigns you've built up?
Sure. Look, the fans have been incredibly important to us, particularly over the last few years, the last few Coke summer campaigns. So we had a great case study with the Coke nickname bottles in 2013. And in that case, we actually had people participating in it, suggesting names, propagating awareness of the campaign before the campaign even launched. And in post, we were actually able to work out that the social part of that campaign, really driven through fans and key opinion leaders, actually sent the awareness of the campaign up to about 25%. So suddenly it was a fantastic case where social proved its enormous value in China.
Coca-Cola, as far as I understand, has many brands, right? And some are doing better than the others on social media. So why are some doing better? And do you see potential in some that's going to do better on social media?
Well, I mean, Coke naturally is our hero and has that in its heart, an idea that is best expressed through social. We would love our other brands to get up to that point, to have that same emotion. So we're still working on it. But I mean, it all starts with the brand idea. If you have a fantastic brand idea and a personality that lends itself for a social conversation, then really consumers take it on themselves. And that's the ideal.
I think that's right. And I think we see another element that happens in campaigns too is if you use a celebrity, you can engage their fan bases as well. So someone like a Mayday with Coke, or any of the KOLs or celebrities for fashion brands. Those actually part of working with the KOL or the celebrity, should be that they work with their fan base to engage around the brand as well. So that's the celebrity and KOL's fan base is another incredible asset to leverage.
Ken, looking across the overall marketplace and all the top brands you've worked with at Weibo, what are some of the challenges companies face when they're transforming their company to more of a fan-based, fan-centric company?
I think that's a great question. I think it actually starts from the mindset and the mentality of the brands. We see obviously more and more brands now, they have Weibo accounts, they open in these social presence. But sometimes they might just think this is something that they have to do and everybody else is doing it, but not necessarily dedicating the right resource in the team, and to do this. And another thing, I think some good example, if you look at some of the Chinese companies like Xiaomi and Meizu, and now even Lenovo, some of these, it's obviously an international company, but it's very much a Chinese company. The way they embrace social media is they don't have just one Weibo account. Right, they probably have 20, 30 Weibo accounts, from the senior leaderships, from the CEOs to different level of senior management, also from not just their brand, but also their sales department, their customer service department. They have multiple Weibo accounts. I think that's one way of truly embracing the social media and the fans culture, because they're all actively having conversations and eager to have these dialogues with the consumers. So I think that's probably a good example of how organizations can truly embrace social media.
You've given just now some great examples and best practices. To summarize, can you give us some of the advice on the do's and don'ts that companies can follow?
I think a couple of do's. First, I think do think social media more broadly these days. I think from our perspective, I think we have done a lot of work that Weibo is not. It's not really just Twitter anymore, right? So it hasn't been that for a long time. But Weibo also is not just a platform for companies to have dialogues and sending out contents. It's also a place for brands to engage with their fans and their customers, also to transact. And actually, more and more campaigns now you see that successful campaigns, do think broadly, is to think not only from a brand building perspective, from a conversation perspective, also from an engagement perspective, also from a transactional sales, social commerce perspective, also from a social CRM perspective. So I think first you have to think broadly, right? So I think, the other side of that, obviously, don't think this just as a conversational platform. So, and I think Another two, I would say, probably is, as I said, when we talk about organizational, fan-centric organizations, I think, a lot of this stuff you have to start internally first. I think, again, it's, I think a couple of years ago, we might see brands first start to allocate some of the budget, to do social media. And then they might establish a team internally to do this. But now I think they need to do this more thoroughly and internally and broadly. So again, it's just, as I said, it's the mindset, it's the concept, starting from the CEO, right? So how do you want to embrace social media? What do you really want to get out of this? It's not just a place to do marketing and to do PR. It's also a place to gather consumer insights. Sam knows a lot about this, right? Gather consumer insights, help you with product innovations, like the Coke, the bottles, and things like these design. You can get consumers to participate that and launch new products, right? So launch new brand, launch new products, having campaigns and sales on this. So I think those mentalities, you have to start with these mentalities and get the whole team, get the whole organization to embrace that and support that. I think that's probably a pretty important part as well.
That's great insights. So apart from the insights and the mentality, let's talk about the company structure. Like, what are some of the specific steps a company can take to revise the structure, both in marketing and even the product line, to make them more sensitive to online fans and to engage more fans?
Well, one thing we've seen, the challenges, especially for global companies, or say foreign multinationals, is this element of control. And so you've got the home office or the headquarters in the US or Europe or wherever it might be, won't fully understand the unique Chinese social media landscape, won't understand that Weibo is more than just the Chinese Twitter. It can do so much of what Ken just talked about. And so you end up seeing local teams, hands are tied. And even if you have local foreign bosses, they may not be fully aware. And again, their hands are tied. So I think that's one of the challenges in terms of organization is, ultimately what Ken said, it's got to be, I think it's critical to be agile. It's critical to be open and to experiment and even fail occasionally. And I think there are a number of them aspects that can impact that, but it's certainly the global versus local freedom is one critical factor.
Yeah, I think there have been some quite spectacular disasters happen that have made companies a bit conservative, but it's a dilemma because you need the local insight and you need a sheer volume of content. It has to be open and liberal in that sense, but at the same token, you have to be careful about what's going on social. So it's quite a dilemma that companies grapple with, I think.
Sam, your company monitors a lot of the companies using Weibo as a platform for marketing. Can you single out a couple of examples and explain to us why they've done so successfully using Weibo, and particularly somebody who did something differently that put them in a leadership position?
Well, I think a recent campaign around the movie, the Big Hero 6, where the main character, Baymax, has the two eyes, which you can actually, in text, you can kind of replicate that. And so Disney, created a campaign asking people to find examples of kind of these Baymax eyes everywhere. And one of the hottest examples was a rice ball with like 2 dots on it. And that happened, and then they were able to leverage key opinion leaders and celebrities to highlight that. So I think it's a good example of sort of starting a wave, right? Seeing that the content, they could create relevant content that could become viral. Then they executed that well, it became viral. They saw what happened with the rice ball, and then they focused on that and made that even more exciting. So I think that's an example of really understanding the landscape and how good content, the use of fans and key opinion leaders can really drive. And I think another example would be from MyZone. This was last year during the World Cup, but they created a bunch of posters whenever a team lost, from the English team lost or Brazilian team. They created funny posters that made people laugh, but then also made people feel better because they could laugh about their team losing. But it was a very funny poster, but also it related to the brand positioning of MyZone, sort of a restorative drink. So it's kind of restoring your humor, right? And so again, that's an example of creating a lot of buzz, but then also making it relevant to the brand.
Let's turn the table around for a bit. What are some of the bad examples you've seen? We don't have to mention the specific company's name, but you could talk
I think
about
we're probably seeing more examples outside of China that have got a lot of negative press. There have been a couple of big ones in Australia recently where brands have just inappropriately tried to acquire from borrowed interests. So there was a couple of cases in Australia that have come up very recently. And I think that's it. I mean, the idea ideally needs to be standalone, needs to come from the brand's heart. And also, important to us is to have something that's more than a novelty. Because you can get a couple of days burst, but if we're looking for a summertime campaign, that idea needs to have enough legs to be maintained over a 3-month period. That's extremely challenging. But I think inappropriately borrowing, using borrowed interests or trying to be part of every single conversation is a mistake. I think naturally in China, I think there's a natural reticence to avoid getting into any sort of potential negative space, which is kind of a good self-censorship mechanism in China. So perhaps we're seeing less of it as a problem in China than in other markets.
Yeah, and I could summarize that as saying not everyone needs a duang strategy, right? So finding a meme and figuring out how to attach yourself to that, and those kind of things, they won't be disasters, right? You're not going to get a ton of negative buzz, but you'll get enough to recognize that this really doesn't fit the brand, right? It's not the right message. It's not the right association. It's creative. But is it relevant is another question. And it goes back to the stuff I think which Coke does very well is, you build strategy based on insights. Insights coming from social media. Who are the key opinion leaders who can drive? What kind of content resonates? And so all of this can be like data-based insights, thanks to social listening. But that can give a more substantial and continued impact as opposed to these trying to get lucky with jumping onto the hottest meme.
Can we each give just one advice on how brands can really engage their online fans in a few simple words?
The idea needs to be so big that consumers will want to participate.
And I think to get to that idea, listening and understanding through systematic research of what people are talking about is a critical piece.
I use a phrase that we talk a lot these days called fans economy. And I think this is where we are trying to lead brands and agencies too. I think the value of social media is actually the value of these fans that they can create for the business. So I think, if you think about these are the fans who can create solid business value for you, I think maybe all the strategies and tactics that brands will think of will be different from just writing content and having this conversation, but we don't know where exactly this is going. So fans economy, I think this is what brands should think about.
Thank you for being on Thoughtful China today. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.
That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Youku, Tudou, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo, WeChat, and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. See you again.